Deputy John Lahart is 10 minutes.
Thanks, Lascount Corla. The Minister is leaving the chamber, and he's probably too young to remember a television programme, Lascount Corla, called Jackanory, but the speech he just delivered there would have featured as one of the classics, I think, on the old Jackanory programme. Lascount Corla, I want to focus my speech, obviously, and my contribution on Dublin and specifically on my own constituency. Now, when the government announced that they were going to go on an advertising campaign in relation to the National Development Plan, I think most people, had the notion that it would be these formalised, departmental-type advertisements that would be taken out in newspapers, the kind of formalised advertisements that we see in newspapers announcing plans or inviting submissions. So I was really surprised when I picked up the Evening Herald yesterday to see a double-page spread that's kind of presented Lascount Corla to the person who's just browsing through the newspaper. It appears like a normal article. It's a double-page spread of articles, but at the top is a little giveaway in partnership with the Government of Ireland. Now, so to the ordinary reader, Lascount Corla, to the ordinary reader, that's a two-page spread of an article, quite a tabloid-like presentation. There's an interview in it with a number of people, one with the famous singer of Aslan, Christy Dignam, and one of the things Christy is quoted in it as saying is that, he welcomes it and it's very good news for Finglas, which it is, and he wishes the building work wasn't going to take 9 years. But someone didn't tell him that actually the building work is going to take 9 years from 2027, because the Finglas-Lewis line isn't included in the proposals and in the projects from 2018 to 2027. Secondly, the ad implies that work on this is construction work on this is beginning tomorrow. Konstantin Gurdiev is quoted in the advertisement as well, and a Finglas youth worker is also quoted, and he's quoted as saying the link will give young people a better chance in life. And what I'm asking, Minister, is what young people of what generation are we thinking of here? Because it's certainly not going to give the young people who live in Finglas right now a better chance in life. And as you know, because this is going to be post-2027, a child born in Finglas today will not set foot on this Lewis until they're about to enter post-primary school. And in fact, well beyond post-primary school, they could be going to college, because this is a plan for post-2027. What I'd like to ask, Minister, is this. Did any of these three people, the at least three people who feature in this article, did they know that this was an advertisement feature that they were contributing to? Or did they know that this was part of the government's communication strategy? Was anybody paid to contribute to this article? And how much did this cost in a major national newspaper, a double-page spread? Because essentially this is a party political advertisement in a national newspaper in what is a marginal constituency in which the sitting Fine Gael TD is fighting to hold on to his seat. So this is very, very targeted political advertising that's essentially being paid for by the taxpayer. In the words of Christy Dignam, I suppose I can ask, how can I protect you from this crazy government as opposed to crazy world? This is something that we're going to be coming back to again and again and again. And if this is the Government of Ireland trying to communicate with people in relation to developments, why isn't the Government of Ireland taking out ads about the chronic traffic congestion in Dublin? Why isn't it taking out ads in national newspapers explaining about the dangerous overcrowding on Lewis, or about the fact that the electricity broke down, affecting hundreds of businesses at peak time in Dublin, or about clarifying all the porkies the Taoiseach told about the hospital waiting list this week, and was called out by an exceptionally reputable journalist in the Sunday Business Post. And then, Minister, I looked up one or two of the newspapers that serve my own area. Southside People would be one, The Echo. And there was, of course, no National Development Plan ads. There were no ads from the government's communication unit. There were no ads from Project Ireland. If there were ads in the Tallow Echo or in the Southside People or any newspapers covering my constituency, that's what they'd be showing. because there is nothing for the people of Dublin South West in the National Development Plan. And in fact, I'd invite people who might be watching and who might be listening, constituents, if they go to Google and Google the National Development Plan, you'll see a PDF. If you log on to the PDF, you can do a word search. And if you word search Lasceam Corla, townlands like Rathfarnham, Tala, Temple Ogue, Ballycullen, Whitechurch, Ballybowden, Marley, Green Hills, you will find absolutely nothing in this National Development Plan. In fact, what they find is that they are sandwiched between the red line Lewis and the green line Lewis, this vast swathe of South and South West County Dublin, which has been abandoned by Fine Gael and by this government in the National Development Plan. And of course, these are the people who are challenged particularly in relation to chronic traffic congestion, who have sight, as I mentioned to the Minister the other night, of the M50, but accessing the M50 is proving impossible. In all the talk about housing and increased density, there's no mention in the National Development Plan about increasing recreational facilities, which has to be a basic standard when we're talking about increased housing. There's no talk about providing additional swimming pools, major parks facilities to service the increased density of housing that we're going to envisage. One or two other things. There are a few mentions of Tala in the National Development Plan, the renal unit in Tala Hospital and an intensive care unit. But these were projects actually initiated by Tala Hospital themselves. The HSE actually delayed the launch and the tender of is delaying the tender of these projects, and now we find them actually wrapped up in the National Development Plan. The Dublin Technological University is relaunched in the National Development Plan. It's no part of the National Development Plan. Bus Connects, which parts of I think are only at pre-consultation stage, and I'm pretty convinced won't be coming online for another 3 or 4 years in terms of having their impact on people in my constituency. But these are all wrapped up and repackaged again in the National Development Plan. Meanwhile, the Minister's own constituency, which already has the Lewis Green Line, is going to get a metro. And still we have this large gap between Dundrum all the way along the corridor, right out to Tala and everywhere in between. No talk of a spur line. And Minister, it doesn't have to be even a line on track. Once it's an actual segregated, dedicated, exclusive corridor for public transport, I think people would accept that as a mid-term measure. But there's absolutely no measure included in the development plan for that. So there's no measures, and I mentioned this the other night, in the here and now. No measures for the here and now. So I absolutely welcome the need for a national development plan. I welcome the need for a national planning framework. But what is lacking with this government are proposals to deal with what happens between now and when all this infrastructure is built out, which in some cases is going to take between 10 and 20 years. And in the meantime, traffic builds up coming into the city, on all the arteries leading into it. Because in the 1990s, if you lived in somewhere like Rathfarnham and Tala, you could actually endure the congestion because you saw the M50 physically being built every day. In the early noughties, you could endure the congestion because you saw the Lewis under construction. But it's going to be a decade before anybody's going to see a shovel in the ground and earthworks happening in any part of Dublin on any of the projects proposed here, and even longer in relation to some of the critical proposals. To follow on what one of the previous speakers has said in relation to Dublin, as a Dubliner and as a Dublin representative, and I'm appealing to the Minister for Transport on this as a voice around the Cabinet table, the challenge for Dublin is to compete with international cities. And I think everybody pretty well accepts that, and that was one of the reasons behind Fianna Fáil's proposal for a directly elected mayor, so that Dublin can go out and compete with the Copenhagens, with the Barcelonas, with all the other cities to attract business and to attract investment into Ireland. What this National Development Plan sets up actually is competition between Dublin, Limerick, Cork and Galway, which is the very last thing we want to do. Dublin and Dubliners have a right to insist and to expect that this county and this capital will continue to be allowed to fulfil its potential as a destination, as a place to do business, as a place to attract investment. But what we've done in the National Development Plan is set Dublin up in competition with other cities in the country, as opposed to other cities outside the country in terms of attracting competition. So, one final point, if I can. No mentions of big issues now to the Minister for Transport: air pollution along the M50 corridor and some of the other major routes like the N81, noise pollution issues in relation to the M50 corridor for people who live in residence adjacent to it. These are really significant issues that have not been addressed in the National Development Plan. Nor, and finally I conclude on this, a commitment by the government to take the kind of approach to parts of my constituency and other constituencies that are ravaged by drugs, ravaged by disadvantages, along the lines of the government's initiatives in relation to the North Inner City. So thanks, Las Cancora. They're just some of my responses to the National Development Plan.